There is no musical act more fascinating than Gorillaz. And after like 7 years of radio silence, we assumed we'd have to wait another 7 for a follow-up to their album Humans, which released last year. But if there's one thing that Gorillaz has never been, it's predictable. Smash cut to the end of May when Gorillaz dropped a new track, Humility, and it's great. It's a #1 jam. It's Gorillaz. And we've since been given more in anticipation of their new album, The Now Now, which releases not in 7 years, but tomorrow. But why am I talking about Gorillaz on a show called Cartoon Conspiracy? Other than, like, look at them. Well, in the video for Humility, a new member of the band was unveiled to us. And he looks an awful lot like Ace, the leader of the Gangrene Gang and the Powerpuff Girls. No, wait, that's not what, that's not even a theory. As weird as it is, this baffling crossover has already been confirmed by the minds behind the band. But this did get us thinking, how did we get here? What the hell even is the story with this band? There's clearly a narrative through everything that's been presented about Gorillaz over the last 20 years, and it's a little all over the place. So today, amid the new band member, the new album, and rumors of an animated series being in the works, we're gonna try to give a somewhat comprehensive guide of the basic story behind Gorillaz, if that's even possible. God help us. So today, we're not really presenting a theory so much as we're unraveling something that's already there. Story details are sprinkled everywhere, from music videos to audio interviews to Instagram posts to a segment on MTV Cribs. Remember that show? And by the way, if you are a super fan of Gorillaz, this video is pretty much gonna be all old news to you. On the other hand, if you're somebody who saw the music videos for Clint Eastwood, Feel Good Inc., and maybe Dare and thought to yourself, neat, but then never really pursued it further, you're in for a hell of a ride. Gorillaz is a virtual band consisting of 2D, Murdoch, Russell, and Noodle, created by real-life people Damon Albarn, the frontman of rock band Blur, and comic artist Jamie Hewlett, most renowned for his work on Tank Girl. The group was basically created as a piss take on popular music, particularly its lack of substance, which the two noticed one night while watching MTV. They then thought, if the music industry is so phony and lacking in depth, why not create a group that was so artificial that it all folded in on itself and the line between fantasy and reality would begin to blur, to the point where no one would even care where the actual music came from. This was one of the main ideas that led to Gorillaz' creation. Less abstractly, Gorillaz stood as an opportunity to create unfiltered, unpretentious music that opened itself up to experimentation that Albarn couldn't really do with Blur, liberally fusing genres in a way that wasn't super common in late 90s popular music. And attributing the music to a fictional band as opposed to real people would allow for extensive collaboration with other artists. The idea of a virtual band wasn't completely new. They had existed in the past in groups like Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Archies, My Canada Bros will hopefully remember Prozac, and other acts have leaked into the public consciousness since. But Gorillaz is undoubtedly the most prominent of these to break into the mainstream music industry. Granted, the music is led by a prominent musician, but it's also because of the care put into the project. While other virtual bands exist, none feel real in a way Gorillaz does. And much of that is through the in-universe story, which, while cartoony, still provides us with the sense that these characters have lives outside their music, just as any artist. Although this story does get pretty insane, so let's get into it. How did this motley crew come together? The fictional band was the brainchild of Murdoch Nichols, troubled youth, delinquent, and Satanist. He once made a deal with a demon to become a famous musician. I'm sure that won't come back to haunt him. One day, while on a crime spree, Murdoch rammed his car through Uncle Norm's organ emporium where some poor sap named Stuart Pott was working. Stu received an 8-ball fracture, also known as hyphema, in his left eye as a side effect of Murdoch driving his car into his face. Stu fell into a coma, and Murdoch was sentenced to 30,000 hours of community service and caring for Stu 10 hours out of every week. So Murdoch showed that he learned his lesson by doing donuts in a parking lot one day with Stu securely strapped in with his seatbelt. I'm just kidding, he was thrown through the windshield and his other eye was fractured. But this accident did wake him up from his coma. Murdoch realized that Stu's bold new fashion statement of "blood has pooled to the front of my eyes forever" kind of awesome, gave him the nickname 2D after the fresh new dents in his head, and recruited him as the lead singer and keyboardist of his new band. The next member discovered was Russel Hobbs, not for his muscle, but percussion he provides. Murdoch found him in a Soho record store. Soho, London, not Soho, New York. They're based in England. While he is a New York native, Russell was relocated to England after many of his hip-hop rapper friends were gunned down in a drive-by shooting. Their spirits then took refuge in Russell's body, notably Del, voiced by Del the Funky Homo Sapien, whose blue ghost shows up in the music videos for Clint Eastwood and Rock the House. But possession apparently has its upsides, as it granted Russell cool ghost white eyes and incredible musical ability. So anyway, Murdoch kidnapped him and took him to their newly acquired studio, Kong Studio, which was situated in a landfill and cemetery in Essex. But Russell was cool with everything after he listened to what Murdoch and 2D were working on, and he stayed on board. With most people in place, all they needed now was a guitarist, and I just realized that I never mentioned that Murdoch is the bass player. He plays bass in the band. Murdoch is the bass player. They tried bringing 2D's girlfriend Paula on board, which quickly resulted in 2D not having a girlfriend anymore after she and Murdoch were caught having an affair by Russell, who resolved things by breaking Murdoch's nose 5 times. With Paula gone, even though it was undoubtedly partly Murdoch's fault, the band didn't really know what to do. They held auditions at one point. They rejected a guy named Jimmy Manson. He's gonna come back later, but eventually they just put out a magazine ad for a guitarist. That same day, a FedEx container from Japan showed up on the doorstep of Kong Studios. From the container burst an energetic young girl who said something in Japanese that was lost on the boys before melting their faces off with a guitar solo. She finished by saying only the word noodle, which became her name since she had amnesia. And so, Gorillaz was born. Upon the release of their first album, 2001's self-titled Gorillaz, the story was pretty straightforward. At this point, the mission was more to establish the group, so there's not a whole lot of progression yet. They toured a bit, partied in excess, tried and failed to get a movie off the ground, Murdoch almost murdered 2D as a result, you know, the usual. That last thing, though, caused the group to go on hiatus for a little bit, ending the time of the band that we now know as Phase 1. Yeah, the story is split up into phases. Try not to make an MCU joke. During the year-and-a-half hiatus, Del was forcibly exorcised from Russell, 2D accepted his stardom, Murdoch went to jail in Mexico but broke out, and Noodle found out that she was part of a scrapped super soldier program. Having reached solace for her amnesia, Noodle was the first to return to Kong Studios, where she wrote a new album, kicking off Phase 2 and getting the band back together. That album was 2005's Demon Days, sporting #1 jams like Dare and Feel Good Inc. In these songs' videos, there's still not much story progression, though we do see the group hanging out in Kong Studios in the video for Dare, though like 98% of it is just Noodle goofing off in her room. We also see the Windmill Island from Feel Good Inc. being followed by black helicopters at the end of its video. But it was the video for El Mañana where things started to go bananas. The video is basically an extended account of those helicopters firing on and subsequently destroying Windmill Island. Only problem is that Noodle was also on the island, so she was presumed dead. Shortly after, the band went on hiatus again. To avoid his demons, Russell jumped off a pier into the ocean and set out to an unknown location. 2D left for Beirut to do whatever it is 2D does, and Murdoch went on a globe-trotting bender, thus ending Phase 2. So this seems like a pretty good time to explain what the hell actually happened during the El Mañana video, because of course Noodle didn't die. Murdoch later explained that the whole thing was a setup orchestrated by him, which explains why he wasn't all that torn up about the incident. Remember Jimmy Manson, the guitarist the original members rejected? Turns out he had been planning his violent revenge on them for a while, but Murdoch caught wind of this and told Jimmy he would help him end Gorillaz with a bang so that he and Jimmy could start their own project. Jimmy was dumb, believed Murdoch, and was told to hide in the windmill tower along with some stashed guns so he could ambush Noodle as the tower was going down and then parachute to safety. Instead, Murdoch locked him in the windmill without any guns, and when the helicopters did take the whole place down, it was Noodle who was parachuting to safety. So, Jimmy's dead. Great! But there were still a few problems. Firstly, the band was still on hiatus. Secondly, Noodle kinda sorta wanted to take a break from the band after the El Mañana music video. And thirdly, while Murdoch did find the crash site, he didn't actually have any idea where Noodle went. She might have gone to hell, nobody really knows. Anyway, during Murdoch's previously mentioned hiatus bender, he began to run low on cash. Being a level-headed guy, he solved this by burning down Kong Studios to cash in on the insurance money and doing business with a gang of pirates called the Black Cloud. After a faulty arms deal with them went south, Murdoch was forced into hiding. While on the run, Murdoch came across an island situated at Point Nemo, the furthest possible point from any other landmass, which for the record is between South America, New Zealand, and Antarctica here. The island was basically a landfill that had collected at sea, so Murdoch claimed it, dubbed it Plastic Beach, and built a new Gorillaz HQ on top of it. Once settled down, Murdoch began working on a new album. But of course, you can't have a true Gorillaz album without the rest of Gorillaz. Getting 2D was easy enough. Murdoch just had him gassed and kidnapped, subsequently holding him prisoner to produce the album. The other two were more difficult since their whereabouts were unknown. Murdoch got around it by replacing Russell with a drum machine and making a robotic clone of Noodle using some of her DNA that he recovered from the windmill crash site. You know, the two most rational solutions! Murdoch also made the cyborg Noodle his personal bodyguard, arming her to the teeth with weapons. But for better or worse, this was Gorillaz' lineup for their third studio album, Plastic Beach, released in 2010. In the real world, Gorillaz also ventured on the Escape to Plastic Beach tour at this time, and during the tour, Damon Albarn recorded another album entirely on his iPad called The Fall, which serves as his personal travelogue with tracks inspired by his experiences on the tour. However, it was released as a Gorillaz album, and the album art depicts a disheveled-looking 2D. Now, there's no real consensus on what exactly The Fall is within the context of the story, whether 2D wrote it while he was being held prisoner by Murdoch, or if 2D and Albarn's experiences during the tour are one and the same. Small thing, but if you do come across the fault, that's what that is. So at this point we're in phase 3, and this is where things start to get a bit spotty, like even for Gorillaz. That's because a lot more stuff was originally planned, but some of it fell through for budgetary reasons. So let's fill in some of these gaps. In the video for Stylo, 2D Murdoch and a now incapacitated Cyborg Noodle are being hunted down by Bruce Willis and this freaky looking dude who's known as the Boogeyman. It's pretty clear Cyborg Noodle was shot as a result of this chase, but why are 2D and Murdoch on dry land when they're supposed to be a plastic beach? According to some unreleased storyboards, the group had attempted to kidnap Bobby Womack, one of the collaborators for Stylo, which presumably leads into the chase we see. The group evades capture as their car swan dives into the ocean and turns into a shark submarine looking thing. This leads directly into the video for On Melancholy Hill, where we see the trio make their way to Plastic Beach alongside all the album's collaborators. Unfortunately, the Boogeyman is there waiting for them, but the group retaliates, defeating him. Dude didn't really go down with much of a fight. Okay, so the Boogeyman. He's a rejected horseman of the apocalypse named Flatulence. He's the demon that Murdoch struck his deal with, who's now trying to collect. He might also be working with Murdoch because he's apparently the one who gassed 2D in Beirut. The Gorillaz website at one point even mentioned that the Boogeyman could be a physical manifestation of Murdoch's evil. Point being, a lot more was planned for him, mostly in the music video for Rhinestone Eyes, which was never made, but the storyboards are available online. But we're getting ahead of ourselves with Rhinestone Eyes. Let's check in with Russell first. How's he doing? Whoa. Okay. Yeah, so in the Making of Plastic Beach documentary, Jamie Hewlett explains that as Russell swam, he ingested so much toxic waste and pollutants that he became huge. Pretty sure that's not how that works, but Russell is a big, giant, scary, gentle ghost man, so we'll give him a pass on this one. Don't eat toxic waste or garbage, though you'll die, probably. As he swam, Russell came across OG Noodle, who at this point had been missing, presumed dead for like 4 years. We discover that she's been at sea fighting off the Black Cloud pirates herself. And in the unreleased video for Rhinestone Eyes, we see the continued attacks on Plastic Beach by the Boogeyman and pirates while Noodle and Russell are reunited with the rest of the group. Also, 2D was eaten by a whale. It happens. But unfortunately, Plastic Beach was not meant to be. Pirates continued to attack it, the island was forsaken, and the group was split up again. But when they came back in 2017 for Phase 4, the Gorillaz Instagram page got us up to speed with personalized books for each character, so let's take a look at these. Murdoch fled with Cyborg Noodle, but was captured by his record label, EMI, who held him prisoner unless he wrote a new Gorillaz album to keep the music industry from dying. He obliged and was moved to a studio in West London. The whale that ate 2D died, but he was left marooned on a desert island with nothing to eat but rancid whale carcass. After an unknown amount of time, probably at least a month, he came across a beach rave and realized that he wasn't stranded, he was in Guadalupe off the coast of Mexico. After bumming around for a year, 2D flew back to London. Stepping off his flight, he followed a man holding a sign that said wanker, obviously sent by Murdoch. Russell and Noodle escaped Plastic Beach together, but were split up after Russell was mistaken for a whale and harpooned. He eventually washed up on a North Korean beach where he became an attraction for the locals, their leader claiming him to be a legendary sea monster. But with the country's limited food sources, Russell shrunk back to his normal size. When the North Korean leader realized Russell was just a dude, he sent him on his way, claiming to have defeated the monster. And finally, Noodle washed up in Japan, unleashed a demon, and set off on an epic quest to destroy it. She then mailed herself back to West London, and once again, the band was back together. It's not clear what happened to Cyborg Noodle after Murdoch was captured, but in a couple Reddit AMAs, both 2D and Noodle say that her head is currently being used as a pot for a bonsai tree. With the release of last year's Humans, in the video for Saturn's Bars, we see the group move into presumably their new home. And of course, it's super haunted by a collection of spirits, including this weird looking thing, this floating pizza, this weird worm looking thing, and also the bath. We also see the group at a club in the music video for Strobe Light, but most importantly is the bit where Murdoch talks to this sketchy looking dude. Turns out that's El Mierda, a notorious criminal who for some reason chose a street name that's Spanish for the shit. He's a gun runner, he's a drug smuggler, name a crime, he's probably done it. And shortly after the events of Strobe Light, he drugged Murdoch and had him framed for smuggling, which got Murdoch thrown in prison. And finally, we've caught up to the present day. As of the posting of this video, Murdoch is still in prison and the #FreeMurdoch campaign is still in full swing, but who knows for how much longer. In the meantime, Gorillaz have set up a system that lets you chat to Murdoch in prison either through voice or text. I did it, it took 5 minutes, and it was hilarious. As for everyone else, they seem alright, living a relatively carefree life and hanging out with Jack Black and others in the Humility video. But because Murdoch is in prison, they needed to replace him. There's no real in-universe explanation as to why Ace specifically is replacing Murdoch yet, but you don't have to look very far for connections between the Powerpuff Girls and Gorillaz universes that have been snuck through in the past. Besides, it's been said in interviews that Jamie Hewlett believes that Ace and Murdoch always shared a sorta spiritual connection. Albarn has also said that they know Craig McCracken, the creator of the Powerpuff Girls, so it all sorta fell into place, which allowed them to secure the rights to use Ace as a character, but not necessarily on a permanent basis. So it's likely that Murdoch will make his return before Gorillaz' next album. But who knows, with rumors of a Gorillaz animated series being in the works, maybe we'll see a confrontation between Ace and Murdoch. Maybe with the show or in the wake of the new album being released, we'll get some answers about those Save Us From Him posters we see plastered in the Humility video. I've got ideas, but we're already way over time today. But hey, if you like this and you want to see us cover more Gorillaz stuff down the line, let us know. I'm personally hoping that the animated series materializes because I really want more excuses to talk about these guys. I know we glossed over some details today, but as you can hopefully see now, those details with the band's story can get pretty messy. Some things contradict others, some stuff has been retconned, the Do Ya Thing video doesn't really make sense with the story we have now, for instance, but that's basically the abridged story of Gorillaz. A virtual band that began as caricatures of the music industry, now fully realized characters inhabiting their own hyper-realistic world. Also, if this video's got you interested, but you've never really checked out the Gorillaz discography, like, go do that. Go listen to all of it right now, even The Fall. Yes, I'm serious, it's great. Shut up, yes it is, I like it in context. But what do you think? Do you think an animated series would pick up where the band is now, or do you think it would be something like a soft reboot? What do you think of Ace as the new member? Alternatively, let us know your favorite Gorillaz track or album or band member in the comments below on Melancholy Hill Demon Days Noodle. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon to join our notification squad. Once again, I'm Jacob, and as always, remember, Frederator loves you.